show do not reflect views and opinions of our advertisers and management of Pacific Telestations LLC. This message is brought to you by the stations of KUAM.
Good evening, Guam. I'm Jess Lujan. Welcome to two special editions of the Candidate Buzz. Joining me for the next 2 weeks is a member of KUAM's Decision 2014 team analyst, Dr. Ron McNinch. How you doing this evening, Doc?
Very good, Senator. Thank you.
It's you and me for the next 2 weeks,
Yes.
and on to November.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, Doc, let me just start with this. Here it is. We are less than 2 weeks away to the primary election. You know, other than me meeting the candidates and talking to them in the morning, at least we're almost concluding the senatorial candidates. The buzz is not quite there. I mean, the excitement is not quite there. As one who's been involved in campaigns, most especially in the gubernatorial campaign, the newer candidates, they say, get your word out there, get it out there, get your message out there, because once the gubernatorial teams mobilize, you're going to get lost. People are not going to remember you. They're going to remember the slogans. They're going to remember the gubernatorial team. Less than 2 weeks away. It's kind of boring. Doc.
Oh, it is boring, and it's difficult to watch. I don't even know why we're having a primary election, to be frank. We don't need a primary election.
We're getting rid of two people.
We're getting rid of two people, basically, and everything else doesn't matter. And so it does absolutely no good for hardly anyone, particularly who's well-positioned in the legislative side, if you're competing on the legislative side, to even try to do anything at this point. There's a conservation of energy thing. It's like running the marathon. You don't sprint in the beginning of the marathon. You don't waste time on a primary that doesn't matter. And so that's why there's low energy. And in fact, luckily, and I'm glad that we have a balanced primary. That is, we have one Democrat and one Republican. If there were two Democrats and one Republican, or two Republicans and one Democrat, then we'd have a mess.
Oh, wouldn't that make it more an exciting election then?
No, it'd be a mess. It would be an absolute mess, unless they're balanced, where you have two Democrats and two Republicans, or maybe even three Democrats and two Republicans.
Okay.
So it's more balanced at the primary level. And we went through this imbalanced primary before in 1998. It was a total mess. It was a non-reflection of reality. Only about 5 or 6% of Republicans voted Republican. The rest all played games with the Democrats. It wasn't healthy for anybody.
Now, let me ask you this. I mean, okay, playing games. Now, when we look at a legislative race, I think this is one of the first times where the Republicans outnumbered the Democrats in regards to the slate, the number of candidates. Now, the legislative race basically is just to remove one candidate from the Republican side that will move on. 15 will move on to the general election. Now, when you're talking about games, now, wouldn't you think, Nate, now in the game playing, that in this case, the Democrats might come over now and say, vote for probably maybe the weakest, try to get out, maybe try to remove the strongest Republican in that sense, because they'll advance anyway. So there's no really need to tell their folks to stay home, go over there and let's play.
Yeah. I think this is such a low energy race, people could care less. And in fact, the 16th Republican isn't even a Republican. They're not even a real Republican. There's no party service. There's no Republican, helping candidates get elected activity. There's no writing on Republican ideals to the newspaper by this one person. There's a nothingness to it. So I don't know why the Republicans, and in the U.S. mainland, a lot of Republican parties would say, get lost. You want to run in our party? You're going to pay your party dues, or you're not going to be part of our party.
Now, let me ask you this, because I've asked that question outside of the candidate buzz. Is that now, isn't it time now to make sure, because we're seeing some of this happen in the last few elections. We're seeing just earlier, I think, when the gubernatorial teams were filing, there was an individual that wanted to file under the Republican Party, running for both offices, governor and lieutenant governor on the Republican side. But I'm saying, well, this individual well, at least in my analysis, is not a known Republican. Now is it time, should we probably go back then to the conventions so we know that Dr. Ron McNinch is more a Republican or more Democrat if he decides to run, and if you switch over, you have to do the transition of switching over.
Sure. And by the way, I'm very blunt about this because I deal
Sure,
with election
sure.
discussion. Anybody who checks my pedigree, my background, will know I'm a Republican. I come from a Republican town. All of my activities are Republican. I ran as a Republican candidate, or I declared as a Republican candidate for an office way back when. Everybody knows I'm a Republican. On Guam, though, I'm in the middle because...
You're a Republican.
Well, because I'm a college professor and I stay out of politics.
Okay.
So I'm kind of in the middle. But what I'd like to say is, how can I say this? I want to be very nice about it. And let's come to an agreement on something. Guam is a wonderful, beautiful, and nice place. And people just aren't mean. And they're kind of nice. And because they're kind of nice, and you got to be like, sorry guy, hit the road. You want to be in our party, you're going to pay your dues. You're gonna do the stuff to make you a party member. You just don't let anybody parachute into your party, because the thing is, parties are, and this is very, very clear in United States politics, they are associations. They're groups. And to be a member of the group, you've got to fit the group's guidelines.
Sure.
And all over the United States, Republican parties and Democrat parties, by the way, and any other party, kick people out who declare themselves to be a member.
And it's funny you say that, because in my interviews in the mornings, right, with this, and when I'm asking questions, they're teamed up with both Republican and Democrat, okay? And so when I throw out the question, and there's a few times that I would be astonished by a Republican's answer, because it would be a very Democratic answer, or a Democratic. What I would be expecting is a Democratic answer coming out from a Democratic candidate is really a Republican stance.
Sure.
And I'm going, so that's basically what you're saying is that a party is just an identity, but in regards to the ideals and the stance that you take, I know when I was a legislator, sometimes I out Republican the Republicans and out Democrat the Democrats.
And parties are vehicles to get elected, and they're a form of organization. They're a way of raising money. There's a way of encouraging people to have similar ideals. But in reality, any bozo off the street shouldn't be able to walk into a political party and say, "You've got to take me because I am able to walk in and ask to join." That's simply not the case. And I'll tell you, I wish one other thing, and this is heart to heart. If I had it my way, if Ron McNinch could change something in this world, I would change our primary to simply a nonpartisan primary. And what that would do is it would remove this ability, it would allow the ability for people to vote on any part of the column they want. So a person can vote for 10 Democrats and 5 Republicans, or 15 Republicans and no Democrats. It could allow them to do anything they wanted, just as they do in the general election. One other little thing, you kind of mentioned it. I feel, given this very low energy primary, why in the world does the government have to pay for primaries? We're spending huge bucks. I think each person, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 are paid for this thing. Sure. If I recall, I might have the number wrong, and I apologize if I do, but I heard it's $300. For what kind of election? For, to be frank, the Democrats should have been able to say, we have 2 people who want to be Congress, which one do we want? They pick and they move on. And that's how it should work. Or the Republicans should be able to say, we have 16 people who want to run, which 15 do we want? And you move on.
And you're right. Come the primary, once the votes are cast and they're counted, there are going to be 2 people that don't move on to the general election. One Republican, one of the Republican side, and one Democratic delegate to Congress candidate. Those are the only 2 that won't advance. And yes, we're spending all these, thousands of dollars basically to do that. And I'm astonished as well as that. Are you concerned? The other day there was a publication that came out that said that young voters are not registering. So, it's just the older voters that tend to be interested in this? Does that bother you at least in this? Do you think there's going to be an upswing of voter registration because now that we know medicinal marijuana is going to be in the general election? What do you think? How do you think that would affect voter registration come after the primary to the general election?
Well, first, you're absolutely right. Younger voters support medical marijuana at a higher level than older voters, and that's very true. Younger men in particular, men under 40, love the issue of medical marijuana for some reason. I don't know why. But, sorry. But yeah, I think we can figure out why, of course. But the thing is, what's going to happen is after the primary election, a lot of young people are going to realize that if they want to be a player and if they want to count, they're going to have to register to vote. And so we'll probably see between the end of the primary and the deadline before the general election, there'll be a push and young people are going to end up registering to vote. They're going to be encouraged to vote. Family members are going to ask every other member, are you registered to vote? If you want to come to my fiesta, prove it. You know, however the families work, they're going to do that. And we're going to probably see younger people, this younger generation, declared. And, you know, they're an interesting group. And they're a very important group because especially the under 30 voters, they're very dynamic and they change their mind very quickly.
We're going to pay some bills. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about polling, accuracies of polling, methods of polling. Be right back.